for the 49ers, man.
How you doing, Coach?
We're gonna make you a Niner right now, okay?
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate you. You getting a workhorse, Coach?
Yeah. All right. That's what we want. We want a workhorse. I'm gonna put you on with Coach Shanahan, okay? Here's Kyle.
Sounds good.
Okay, Ricky.
Ricky, congrats, man.
Thank you so much, Coach. I appreciate you.
Where you at right now?
I'm back in AZ right now, back at home.
Awesome, man. You gonna be ready to go?
Yes, sir. More than ready.
Who you with right now?
I'm with my whole family, mom and dad's side.
Nice,
Friends,
man.
close friends.
They all excited?
Yes, sir.
Well, good, man. We love your style, man. Love how you play. I hope you're ready to come to work, man. Now it
Thank you,
starts.
Coach. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, Ricky. We'll be in contact, man. Here's our own.
Back to throw Montana. Steps up, throws. The 49ers have won the Super Bowl.
And now your host, Ryan Hensley.
Now your host, Ryan Hensley.
What's going down, everybody? It's Monday. I'm here with Croc. What's up, Croc, man? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Feeling good, feeling blessed. I hope everybody in the chat, man. We got people jumping in the chat already. I hope everybody else is feeling good as well.
Yeah, man. Let's see a lot of you. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I know the Flames. That's a Eric Croc channel thing, right? Like that's what you do on the Croc show.
Hey, listen, man, and y'all know we're gonna get it back going and get it popping. Yeah. But the Flames right there is if you're feeling great, 5 Flames, anything less than that, maybe there's something going on in your personal life. Reach out to me. I'll shoot you my number, DM me, whatever. If there's things you need to talk about. I think that as someone who I personally haven't experienced like mental health issues to a point where I felt like, man, I don't have nobody to talk to about this. I've never really felt that, but going through it with my wife and knowing how big it was for her to have me, that was huge for her mental health, for our psyche, for our marriage. So anybody out there, man, that hey, the Flames, that lets us know how you feeling. And yeah, man, anybody you ever need somebody to talk to, you ain't got nobody, man, y'all can hit me up.
Same here, man. Same here. I've been through a lot of crazy things, especially when I was younger. So I can definitely relate, man. I don't even want to share it. It's too dark for Monday morning, but just trust me, I've been there. So same thing. If always feel free to DM myself or hit up Croc. And yeah, mental health is key, man. It really is. How's your mental health after this draft? Look, so this time last week, we did a mock draft and then I blew the whole thing and erased it after like the 5th round or something. But you drafted Pearsall in the 2nd round. You also you put out a list of guys that you were interested in. Besides Pearsall, and I don't even know if I'm saying dude's name right, but besides Pearsall, was there someone else as well that you wanted that the Niners got?
When I look at the draft, it's not so much about like what players I want or what players the consensus think the 49ers need. It's when they select a player, and this is how I view it. When the 49ers select a player, whoever that is, I always try to look at it from their perspective on what are they trying to do with this pick? What role do they see this pick having? And, and then obviously we want to identify his game, you know what I'm saying? And we'll all have an opinion on if we would have taken another guy, if we would have done things a different way. Peacock and I, we're going on Locked On 49ers. We'll be diving more into that side of things. But overall, as far as like a player I wanted at spots they were picking, we'll probably go through that as the draft goes on. But I will say, as far as players I like, I really like the kid out of Arizona. And him being the receiver that he is. I watch a lot of Arizona. I have a kid that I trained that played running back for Arizona, Jonah Coleman, he just transferred to Washington with the coaching staff. But I got a chance to really watch him and see what he does and what he does well and all this. And this guy, you get the ball in his hands and he makes things happen and he's twitched up and he runs good routes. He's just undersized, but he adds a speed element to the 49ers offense. I feel like they've been kind of missing. So I was excited about that pick.
I like Jacob Cowan is the guy you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, Cowan. My bad. I didn't say his name, but yeah.
the guy that got in the 4th round at 135, Jacob Cowan, and that's kind of why I got like a little bit of a reservation about Pearsall at number 1. Like, I think he's good, but like I like Jacob Cowan in the 4th round. So I think we should just break it down. Let's talk about it. There's 2 guys I wanted in this draft, and I got 2 of them. Or there are several guys I wanted, but I got 2 of my guys. First and foremost, Malik Mustapha, who is, and we'll talk about him. I like him a lot. I wanted him in this draft, and we got him. The other one was Isaac Guerendo. To me, he's like he could be amazing, or he could be he's like the boomer bust pick to me, Isaac Guerendo. So we'll talk about all of them, but let's start at the top, man. Let's start at the top. I want to get your take on just overall. Let's start one by one. First pick in our mock last week, you had him in the 2nd. A lot of people like this guy. I know you were interested in him, but at pick number 31 was kind of a shock. I don't think I've seen anybody with him coming to the Niners at pick 31. So that's kind of a shocker. Explain your thoughts on Ricky Pearsall and your take on the Niners getting him in the 1st round at 31.
All right, so Ricky Pearsall, I did a mock with you. I've done a mock with Brian Peacock, kind of joint collaborative things that we talk through things. But every year I try to do like my own personal mock, and I only did one. Like, that's it. Like, there's only one mock out there that I personally put together, and then I posted to social media, and it's typically the day before or the day of the draft. And I had Ricky Pearsall going in the 2nd round. But when I selected him, and I almost put it in my notes, like, I don't think he'll be there at 63. Now, if the 49ers are picking 45th, 50, maybe I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I think this is realistic. He's here at this point. So with the 49ers picking at 31, and I saw a lot of people saying, oh, he's a reach, you could trade back, etc. I think there's a few different ways. Again, just look at it from the 49ers perspective, not saying that they're right or wrong or whatever, but how were they viewing it? I don't think they knew for a 100% fact that Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel were going to be a 49er by the end of day 2. Obviously it's something that they probably wanted to be the case, but I don't think they knew for sure. And I also think that potentially they understand kind of needing to improve at the tackle spot. But for the guys that they probably identify as 49ers, they would have to move up to get those guys. And I don't know what their board looks like. So the 49ers like very specific guys. I don't think you could just say, hey, man, this is a deep tackle class. There's 8-9 tackles that might go 1st round. 49ers should be able to land one of them. Well, yeah, but how many do they identify as fitting what they do from a movement skill standpoint, from a schematic standpoint? If it's down to 3 guys, and those 3 guys are going in the top potentially top 17, so they have to trade up in that range to be able to draft a guy that they identify as a fit for them, but nobody wants to trade up with them, then their hands are kind of tied from that scenario. Now, aside from being able to trade up for an offensive lineman, there were a lot of mocks floating around prior to the draft, even guys like Preeta Schrager and all these guys that had the 49ers taking a receiver. So I don't think the receiver position was a shock. I think for a lot of people, it was Ricky Pearsall,
the player.
And I'm looking at big boards on guys, and you see him at 37 for some guys. You see him at 45 for some guys. I saw him at 43 for some guys. We're talking about a 12-player difference or so from where they selected him. So from that standpoint, I'm not sure it's as much of a reach as a lot of people think. Did they draft him ahead of where he was potentially going? I believe so, yes. There also was a run on receivers at the end of the 1st round. And it kind of started with the 49ers, then the very next pick with Leggett, and then the following 2 picks were receivers as well. So you have 4 straight receivers taken. Hey, what if there was 3 straight receivers taken and somebody between picks 33 and 63 liked Ricky Pearsall, but the 49ers identified him as a terrific fit for them? Would they have been able to get their guy? And would they have been able to trade up for him, or would they even been able to get him? So those are things that I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of maybe why they selected him where they did. As far as the player, when you put on this film, and this was a guy that I mocked multiple times to the 49ers, I genuinely really like his fit for what the 49ers do. And I think he adds a different element to this offense, especially for a team that was relying on Juwan Jennings to be their wide receiver 3. And they've kind of, I don't want to say tricked 49er fans into thinking that Juwan Jennings is this big factor in the offense, but I think he was more serviceable than anything, and he did a solid job as a serviceable receiver. But you get a guy like Ricky Pearsall and you plug him in, now you're talking about a big three at the receiver group. Now you're talking about a more talented, maybe one of the better groups in the NFL if Ricky Pearsall ends up being what they expect him or want him to be. But there's no pressure on having to be the guy. You have this year where you can work through whatever in Kyle Shanahan's offense with Debo and Ayuk and just grow in the offense. And it can happen more organically. And then next year, you have a guy who is probably going to be your wide receiver 2 alongside Brandon Ayuk. That's what I would assume. So I think from that standpoint, when you look at the fit with him and what he does, he's a terrific route runner. He's really good at the top of routes. He understands how to sell routes. I think he is able to win vertically. You watch him on the outside, he can win vertically on the outside. You watch him in the slot, he can win vertically from there. He has a different ability to be able to consistently create separation. When you watch the 49ers in the Super Bowl, there was a big issue there with them putting their CB1 on Brandon Ayuk and him kind of getting clamped a little bit. Debo Samuel, they threw the ball to him 11 times. He had 3 catches. He couldn't create any separation. So who's that third guy that's really able to kind of break apart a defense from an ability standpoint? And I think Ricky Pearsall is that capable of receiver. So obviously we'll see how this goes and how he grows in his offense. But watching this fit, where he lined up at Florida, outside winning, inside winning, they motion him. He do jet sweeps with him. They do orbit motions with him. There was a lot that I liked from an ability standpoint, and see why the 49ers took him.
Yeah, so I got so many questions on this guy for you.
I see it in the chat. Somebody said, but he's 24. He will be 24 as a rookie. Debo Samuel was 24 as a rookie. So like that part, I don't, if you're telling me he's good for the 49ers for the next 5 years, and by the time he's 29, you don't want him anymore, whatever. But if you have him for these 4 years and then his 5th-year option and you want to go a different direction, I don't care. Get the best out of him right now.
That's kind of a good thing in a way, honestly, because then you'll never have to really pay the guy like a crazy elite contract. Yeah, the 49ers, that was the general theme. A lot of people are talking about the Brock Purdy effect on the draft moving forward, that a lot of teams would be looking for quarterbacks like Brock Purdy later on. And so I never really bought that. But here's a Brock Purdy effect you actually really see with the 49ers. It's funny. They literally drafted dudes that are like 4th year, 5th year, 6th-year seniors sometimes. Almost every single pick was one of those guys. They look for guys that have a ton of playing time. No freshmen, no sophomores being drafted to the 49ers. All guys with playing experience. It's funny. It seems like they're like, well, Brock Purdy's experience made him a contributor right away. Maybe we should do that with all of our picks. And they literally did that this year, which I found interesting. Let me give you my take on the Pearsall thing. Like, when watching him, he's very interesting. And I do have a question for you that I want to get your take on. But when watching him, I like him. He's very dynamic and interesting. And honestly, and we'll talk about all these players, but with all the players the 49ers drafted, I like them all pretty much for the most part. Are all of them going to be good? No. If you're looking back at all the drafts under Kyle Shanahan, a really good draft, 4 or 5 dudes are going to be contributors and be players in this league. A really good draft under Kyle Shanahan, if you look at them by year. A bad one or 2 might be contributors. So thinking that all 9 and 10 of these dudes are going to be good would be a little bit naive. Some of these guys aren't going to work out. Ricky Pearsall might be one of the guys that works out. But here's my thing. When we get into the draft, like I asked you last week, what do you think the needs are for the 49ers? And I expected the 49ers to either draft a wide receiver. That was one. I had 3 positions on my list. They'll draft a wide receiver, D-line, which I was horribly off on, or offensive line. Those are the 3 positions I thought they would draft. What I wanted them to draft was a defensive tackle or an offensive lineman. I understand the whole thing. Like, at this point in the draft, most of the, no question tackles, they're already off the board. So I was thinking maybe tackle in the 2nd round. But Jackson Powers-Johnson, and to me, the center position is extremely important. Maybe, you can argue it's the 3rd most important position on the team. You can really argue that. At least I can. Maybe I'm tripping, but I don't think Jake Brendel is that dude. And Jackson Powers-Johnson was on the board at that point, along with several defensive tackles. I thought that that's how the way they should have went, especially because when I look at the wide receiver board, and again, maybe Ricky Pearsall is head and shoulders above like Cowing that we got in the fourth round, maybe, or the fifth round. Maybe he is. No, was it fifth? Yeah, fifth
Late
round.
fourth. I think it was like
Late
the
fourth,
last pick.
135. Yeah, you're right. So maybe he's head and shoulders better than that dude. But when I watched the film, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like Cowing might end up being better than him in the long run. So to me, it felt like a real opportunity to upgrade that offensive line, which seems to be really important to me and not to too many other people, because I don't know. The Niners, I wanted to share this with you, man, and then I do have a question, I promise. I'm sorry. The Niners, man, have not invested in this offensive line very much at all. I want to share something with you, if I could find the damn thing, man. That our guy Jesse Naylor put out. We were actually texting and talking about it. If I could find the damn thing, I would do it. I don't know. But basically, oh, here it is. So he broke down the division, right? He broke down our opponents, but within the division, the Rams have drafted 13 of their last 24 picks were in the trenches, 54%. Seahawks, 8 of the last 18 draft picks were in the trenches, 44%. Cardinals, 8 of the last 21 draft picks were in the trenches, 38%. The 49ers, 3 of the last 17, 18%. He lists all our foes, the people that we see in the playoffs. The Niners have not been investing in the trenches, particularly in the offensive line. And that's like, to me, I'm like, damn, like, we're going to go through all these picks, and I don't want to talk too long about all this, but I like the player. I just don't know if I like the prioritization of said player. So I want to get your response to that.
I would like to know where what is the average on where those guys are drafted? You know,
Meaning,
are they like, let's say, you know, because he just put in the trenches, right? And the 49ers haven't put a whole lot of resources there.
mm-hmm.
The 49ers, especially since not having, first of all, real quick, what was the window that he put there? Like how many drafts?
2.
I did see the tweet, but
Last 2.
The last 2. So
yep.
Last year and this year?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
So it's also tough because the 49ers last year, they didn't have a first or second round pick.
True.
And the year before, they didn't have a first round pick, right? So you know, there's a kind of a window of maybe not having the same kind of capital in picks as some of these other teams. So once you start getting into late third where they're picking because they're in a conference championship game or Super Bowl every year, right? Now, especially last year, you don't pick until pick 86. And I think you had to even trade up for Jair Brown in that range, right? So unless you just kind of want to throw offensive lineman or defensive lineman out there just on some like, well, let's just see what happens type stuff. I think it's a little bit more difficult in the 49ers situation. Who's to say if they didn't have a first round pick, there's a guy that they maybe would have liked at some point, right? I think this year, the guy that made 100% the most sense at 31 would have been Jackson Powers-Johnson. Kyle Shanahan, the guys that it feels like for whatever reason, I don't know why, but he has gone with more veterans at the center position, whether it was Alex Mack, Richburg, who he gave a lot of money to, and now even like Brendel, like they've all been kind of guys that are more veterans. So does he lean more that way because there is a lot more put on the center in the 49ers scheme? If I'm not mistaken, there's not a whole lot that the quarterback has to do from an adjustment standpoint on the O-line. I think a lot of it is on the center. So maybe does he want to have more of a veteran presence that understands how to do that? I don't know. Again, a lot of it I just try to, because I think it is easy to just be like, oh, why they ain't addressing the trenches? So I think my question always is, okay, well, why aren't they? Let's try to look into maybe what are they thinking about this? And they haven't had a whole lot of picks early on the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've come to the conclusion to answer that question, to answer why. I just feel like they just don't value it as high as other teams, maybe. I feel like they value, you know, quarterback, obviously, they pass rushers, they value weapons, they value that left tackle spot, they value the left side of the line, but I just don't see them. They haven't shown me that they value the right side that much. I mean, so beyond what Jesse said, I also checked 4 draft picks over the last 29 have been offensive linemen. None have been above round 3. So round 3, round 4, round 5, and round 7. That's the investment they've made out of the last 29 picks in offensive line. And so to me, it's like, they say actions speak louder than words. Based on their actions, they haven't invested a lot of draft capital. They've drafted 4 tackles in 7 years. 4. And so it's just they just don't show me that they really want to spend draft capital there. And that they feel like they can get by with later round dudes. That's what it feels like to me.
I would agree. I'll tell you where they feel like with the getting by with later round guys, but where I would kind of disagree is, should they drafted Mike McGlinchey number 9 overall over guys I felt like were day one. Like, this is a guy. You got Minka Fitzpatrick on the board. There's Derwin James there. Like, these are guys that can come in and make an immediate impact, like day one starters. And they're like, nah, we need to address this offensive line. We have Trent Brown. We don't like the way Trent Brown fits in this offense. Let's go with Michael McGlinchey. He's going to be our guy for the next 4 years or so, right? And if he wasn't drafted 9, I think we might like it a little bit more, but he's 9th overall. You passed on all-pro guys. You did have a 4-year starter. Like, he started in the game he was healthy, he started, right? How well was he playing consistently? That's, you know what I'm saying? But when we talk about them maybe prioritizing, let's say even the trenches, right? Like their first draft where they go, Solomon Thomas, let's go inside. A couple years later, there were receivers there that people felt like they should maybe get, with CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. They had opportunity. Jefferson wasn't in that realm of guys for most people, but they're like, no, we're going to go in the trenches. We're going to go get Javon Kinlaw. They had another draft where they, got a quarterback, and then they went and got Aaron Banks. So I'm not saying that they don't think that it's a priority. But they have shown that, man, when we feel like it's a need, a big need, we do go after it. My thing has been, at least with this specific class, I think, and I've said this all along and people just felt like I was crazy, I truly believe that the way they view their offensive line right now is different than the fans and maybe even people at like PFF that may give them lower grades. Like, and again, trying to look at it from their perspective. If you're telling me that this offensive line, where we can improve on if we have that opportunity, right? But we had the number 1 rusher in the league. Maybe we couldn't really run to the right a whole lot, but you had the number 1 rushing back in the league. You had the most efficient quarterback in the NFL in all metrics. You have one of the most efficient offenses in the entire NFL. So maybe they view it as like, hey, we would love to get better at certain spots, but it's got to be the right guy, because maybe we view the guys that we have, at least with their ability to, be able to function around maybe a deficiency. These guys can do that. So we don't have to go out there and make some drastic move and just bench a guy just to bench him when they contributed to such a high potent offense. But if that right guy is there, then yeah, of course, let's improve over him. But if it's not the right guy, okay, we're cool with all these guys coming back. Maybe there's another area we can improve. Maybe we can get more dynamic at a receiver spot. Maybe we get rid of one of these receivers. The game goes through CMC, George Kittle, you know what I'm saying? And then we have our pass catchers. But hey, let's add this guy and see where we go from there. And maybe the 3rd round pick, Puni will be a guy who steps in and maybe beats out somebody at a guard spot. I don't know. Yeah. Again, that's just me trying to, when you just throw out the numbers of they haven't went after the trenches as much as other teams. I always try to look at like, well, why haven't they?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you looking at it from a different perspective. I'm still bitter about it. I'm gonna be real. I'm still bitter, but I played football as a young man, not nearly at your level, and I was a right tackle and a nose tackle, and I just love that position, right? And I just feel like it's so damn important. And I just don't see, like, Jake Brendel serviceable, Colton McKinnon serviceable, gave up 13 sacks on the edge. You're right. Everything you said about Brock Purdy is correct. You're right about CMC being able to run mostly to the left. But how much better in my head, how much better would Brock Purdy be if he actually had a solid ass O-line? How much better would CMC in this run game be if they could run to the right just as well as they could run to the left? So I don't know. I guess
Can I answer the question on Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
And this is a testament to Brock and him paired in his offense. Even if let's say your pass protection is better on the right side.
Yeah.
I don't know how much better he can be. Like, I
That's
don't
true.
know how much more. If you're more efficient than everybody in the NFL, how much more efficient can you be? Maybe there's another level, right? We're talking about,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? But from what I saw, just his ability to drop back, get the ball out of his hands. Were there times where guys broke through? Of course. Were there times where you get sacked? Or were there also times where he made plays? Of course. But I think for the most part, again, his ability to just function behind whatever that offensive line was, it was at such a high level. I don't even know what that looks like to be even better than what he was, because I felt like it was down there as good as you could hope for from a quarterback perspective.
And we'll talk about that more like as weeks go on, because we're still on 26 minutes in. We're still in the first pick conversation, so we probably should move forward. But like, and I agree. I just think Brock Purdy's got this whole offseason, so he could possibly be better. He's lifting, he's working on his mechanics, so it's possible he's better. The other thing too is not just about how good he is; it's about how clean his pocket is, like keeping him healthy. And I don't know. I'm just the offensive line freak, man. Like that's my thing. I like to focus on.
I hear you.
But,
it reminds me of the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And they were picking top 5, and they had an opportunity to like go with Sewell, Penei Sewell, who has ended up being an All-Pro tackle, or go with a receiver. And this is a quarterback who his rookie year tore his ACL, what I'm saying, getting hit. And it's like, man, the offensive line was bad. How are they going to improve on that? And you draft a receiver top 5 over Penei Sewell. And we see Jim Harbaugh do the opposite, right? Like Jim Harbaugh was like, no, like we prioritize O-line. I look at offensive line as a weapon. Everybody's saying we need a receiver, which I think they do. Yeah. But hey, we're not going to go get that receiver over building what we think is a weapon in Joe Alt at tackle. So
that's
those
music
are two
to my
different,
ears.
Those are
music
two
to my
different,
ears.
Perspectives. Yeah. And we saw the Bengals, even after drafting Jamar Chase over a Penei Sewell, they went to the Super Bowl. And then after that, they went to like conference, like they've been good. 49ers without maybe addressing the O-line as much as people like, 3 straight conference championships. So I'm not saying that it's the wrong way to go about things, but again, I think some of these teams, their philosophy, they're viewing it slightly different.
Yeah, and I think honestly, Kyle looks at it as he wants a certain thing in the run game, outside zone, right? The run game, that's important to him. That's why he looks for guys that can move in his offensive line versus just big dogs that can stand up in pass protection. And I also think, with their passing game is so quick passing that's probably another reason why he doesn't need dudes that can hold up for 2.5 seconds, because the passing game is so quick. I got one more question for you on Pearsall, and then we'll move on. But people have been saying, and I want your take because you're a corner expert, man. They're saying he can't beat press man coverage. A lot of people are saying that he struggles against press man coverage. Do you see that? What's your opinion on that?
I got Pat McAfee show on the screen, and they're talking about Ayuk and Debo. Obviously, I can't hear it. I don't know what Adam Schefter's saying, but they're asking about are they staying put. But my bad. One more second. Repeat the question again.
Press man coverage, Pearsall. Can he beat? Because a lot of people are saying he can't. So I haven't watched enough tape on him to have an opinion on that. I wanted to get your take on that.
All right. So the way I kind of like when I'm watching these guys, and I hope that when I'm watching receivers, defensive backs, I'm crossing all T's, dotting all I's, right? And there are certain things that come to mind when I'm watching them, like just something that stands out to me for a specific reason. Let's say I remember Jerry Jeudy when he was coming out. I remember watching Jerry Jeudy, and I'm watching him do all these fantastic things, right? Like just as a route runner, the speed in which he ran his routes, his ability to threaten guys vertically, how fast he played. But I noticed something, and I'm like, man, I saw a drop, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's a coincidence or whatever. Then another one, then another one, then another one. And every time he's dropping these balls, I'm realizing he's dropping these passes with bodies around him. Like if there's like a threat of contact or has to play through contact at the catch point, or even just a remotely, maybe somebody that could potentially hit him, it was like he like lost focus and dropped the ball. And I'm like, I wonder if that's going to carry over to the NFL, but it just caught my eye. Like, that's very interesting. And things like that with receivers, typically, like there's something where I'm like, man, this keeps catching my eye and it's just noteworthy. When I was watching Ricky Pearsall, him not being able to beat press coverage, that was not something that popped in my mind. So I'll have to go back through and watch and see, maybe I missed something that may be an issue. I remember watching Jamar Chase. And for as great as Jamar Chase was as a college prospect, I remember thinking, I've never seen a top prospect receiver get hands put on him more than Jamar Chase. Now, he would just fight through the contact and then make a terrific catch at the catch point. But like, guys were putting hands on him left and right. Like, so if there's like an issue of being able to beat press, it was like Jamar Chase, it was like extreme. Like, they're getting hands on him down there every time they try. Yeah. With Ricky Pearsall, again, it was just something that it never came to mind. So somebody said, it sounds like it should be a yes or no answer. My answer would be no. But maybe I missed something. That maybe I missed it. Maybe I need to go back and watch more to where that is an issue, because I have seen that float around my timeline a lot. And that's not to say I never saw somebody get hands on him. I watched him from a tight split work on a deep crosser, and somebody like hit him and it kind of knocked him off his path and he wasn't able to get quite away from it. But I didn't see it enough to where I'm like, oh man, like this is something that is an issue with Ricky Pearsall's game.
Let me ask you this real quick before I get these super chats. You got a time where you got to get out of here today? Because I feel like this show could go really long and I'm down, but I want to make sure you're okay with it.
I'm free, baby. I'm free.
Let's do this. I'm
already
excited.
Got my workout in, feeling good. I'm ready to go. I'm good.
Good, man. All right, well, this is going to be a good show for everybody watching. Stay tuned. Dave Barclay, 999 says, my guys, what up? Are we happy, Croc? I'm a little confused, but I think it's a trend as a Niner fan watching the draft. Love you guys. Keep it up. Are you happy, Croc, with this draft overall?
I thought they got guys that could contribute to some extent. How much will they contribute? We'll see, but I'm not unhappy with it, I guess. I don't care about the draft as much as other people. Like, I just look and see, man, did the 49ers, what were they trying to do with it? But like, it's a crapshoot. Maybe two of these guys work out. So being happy or unhappy, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think I view it that way.
Yeah. Jason says, why draft O-line when you have needs at wide receiver 4 and 5? I love it. I love it, man. Thanks for the super chat. Brother Boss said, let's be honest. We give two shizzes about O-line except left offensive tackle. That's what it feels like, man. That's what it feels like, Brother Boss says. 3 years ago, KC bad O-line cost Super Bowl immediately fixed. I liked how KC drafted too. We're going to get into round 2, and I'm going to talk about that part of it also. Thanks for the super chat, brother.
They drafted Mike McGlinchey 9th overall to play right tackle,
which was a horrible decision.
I know, but I'm saying like we can't say. Let's say if it's that's not the guy that we like, so we're going to discredit them for attempting to identify like a guy that like they wanted, and like say, well, aside from that, they don't factor. Like,
is it possible
like, they drafted Aaron Banks 2nd round? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that, and that was at a time they had Laken Tomlinson. Yeah. They had Lincoln, who was playing at a Pro Bowl, All Pro, however, whatever level, and they still drafted Aaron Banks. Like, I think they do look at it a little bit different than I think people are saying.
I lost my train of thought, but yeah. No, it's all good. Jaw, $5. Tanner Mordecai might be this year's Brock Purdy with a bigger arm and runs a 4.46 40. I think Brendan Allen might be gone. I haven't seen a lot of them, but from what I watched, I think you're dead on with what you're talking about there, and I think he is coming for Brendan Allen's job, maybe even more. He does seem like a Brock Purdy clone, so it's interesting, man. And then Dave Barclay, Kyle won't get out of his way, Brother Bob. Super chat to Brother Bob right there. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all the love. All right, next spot, man. Your position, Renardo Green, Florida State University. And I got a specific question about this one because I saw you tweet something, but I want to give me your overall take about Renardo Green and what do you think about that pick?
All right, so let's just look at the prospect first. He's a guy that has very fluid movements. I think he has really good feet. You know, you watch him and he's very comfortable in press alignment at the line of scrimmage, whether it's zone, like reading concepts from a zone perspective. He likes to do it from the line of scrimmage, or if he's playing press man. You know, the first thing that Peacock and I did, we were live at the time. You go and you want to see, man, who's the most talented guys this guy played against. So you put on the LSU film and we watched some of all 22, and just watching him compete with, you know, Brian Thomas, watching him compete with Malik Neighbors. You know, that was really fun to see, because for me, it's, you know, are you allowing a lot of space? Are you challenging yourself through route? I felt like he was. I felt like he had a good feel for, you know, squeezing routes, squeezing the receiver in routes, versus man coverage and being scrappy at the top. I think a lot of people say he's a little too handsy. Whatever, compete. That's all I care about. You know, now if he's getting flagged a ton, then all right, let's address that. But from what I saw a guy that just competes, and not the biggest guy. My issue, I don't want to say my issue with the pick. Unless the 49ers, okay, look, we'll go back. Ambry Thomas. I remember when Ambry Thomas was coming out, and I'm watching Ambry Thomas, and I'm like, oh man, not the most fluid guy. So he's not as fluid as Green, but I thought he was a really good athlete, and he was a terrific press man corner. And like Green, he was a guy who read concepts from press alignment and did a good job of that. So essentially, like, let's say if he's in quarters, or let's say if he's in, we'll use quarters for an example. He'd be the outside shade. You know, he'd, you know, turn into the receiver, do what I call pressure key, visual key. So he got his hands on his pressure key, which is the guy in front of him, but still reading his visual key, who potentially could come out to his area, gets hands on, squeezing it until he has an opportunity to fall off to a guy that maybe breaks his route off. Ambry Thomas did that well. What the 49ers did was say, well, we run this quarter scheme, but you're playing a lot of off. So Ambry Thomas, a guy who I identify as a good press man corner and does good from there, they're like, no, well, we're going to have you playing 7 yards off and having to backpedal and do your work from there. But that's not his strength. And then we look and see, like, well, how does a guy like Diamador Lenoir end up playing a lot more than Ambry Thomas? Well, Lenoir played off well. He was more, his click and close was better. He was more twitched up from movement skill standpoint from off coverage at Oregon. And Ambry, they played him the opposite of what he did well. So it didn't quite work out. It hasn't worked out yet. I think when I watch Green, it's similar. And from the standpoint of he does his best work at the line of scrimmage. And he does a really good job doing that. And he feels comfortable doing that. When I watch him from off, and it's not that he doesn't have the ability, like, you know, like I said with Ambry Thomas, I just thought him playing off was definitely not ideal. When I'm watching when I'm watching Green, it looks like he potentially has the ability to do it, but it's going to take a lot of work just coaching him up to be more comfortable being as aggressive from off as he is press. So those are just kind of some of my thoughts on that. Like, if you're just saying, hey, we're going to do what we've been doing, which is we play a lot of off quarters, even with guys like Travarius Ward, which I don't think that's necessarily a strength of his, but he's done a really good job at it. If you're just telling Green you're going to do that from day one, I don't know if we'll see the best version of Green right away. It'd be something that takes some time.
So this is interesting. This is what I wanted to ask you about, because I saw you tweet about this. And so this is my ignorance to that position, right? I guess I looked at this incorrectly. So to me, I always thought if you could be good in man, that you could be good in zone, because zone is an easier assignment. But you're telling me that there's stark differences, right? Like, explain that to me. Like, I always thought if you're good in man, if you can be good in press man coverage when you're up against a dude, that you'll have an easier time adjusting to zone than vice versa. Explain that to me, because I don't understand it.
So that has always even been my thought. Like, oh man, like the first thing I want to do is identify guys that have man coverage and terrific movement skills. And then from there, I could teach you zone, because, you know, however I want my zone or whatever, I could teach you where your eye is supposed to be, and I can get you the jump routes and all that. But there are some guys that are just more comfortable doing one thing. And if you switch it, it's not that you can't teach Green, but like I said, I don't know if you'll see the best version of Green right away. It will be something, especially at the NFL level, because not only is there just a transition from learning how to play off more consistently and squeeze routes from there and really challenge from that standpoint. Be as aggressive from off as he is in press. But the NFL, they throw a lot more at you. Like from a schematic standpoint, you are learning so many different ways of how to do certain things. And then the quarterbacks are much more on time. Like it's a drastic difference going from college to the NFL from a timing standpoint. Let's say even we'll use Malik Neighbors and those LSU guys, right? And the quarterback was Jaden Daniels. He was drafted number 2 overall. Well, Jaden Daniels a lot of times would still sometimes want to see something open and then throw it or whatever. NFL is just timing. Boom, 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 boom. And you got to be on it. So if you're a guy that's not used to necessarily playing off, and especially quarters, if we're just talking about cover 3, that's a little different because you have a like curl flat player. In quarters, it's kind of like it kind of turns into man at a certain distance. So if you're not really consistent with challenging yourself from off from there and truly understanding when to get in and out of your breaks and feeling comfortable doing that, it could just be more of a transition. Now, he has, from a movement skill standpoint, I think he has more ability to play off than I thought Ambry Thomas did. I thought Ambry Thomas was like just play him press. And there were even times I saw him starting to get it here and there, but I think we saw a lot where it was just drastically inconsistent. I think Green has the ability, and maybe that's what they're thinking. Like, look, he can play press man. He has the ability to play off. We're just gonna have to really coach him up on it, and maybe that's what. But if you're saying day 1 starter, right? Like that's what I would assume. If you're drafting the guy round 2, you want him to be a guy that's in the mix right now. I think there's going to be a transition that they tell him to play off.
Now, does that change? And you know what? I labeled this grades, but honestly, grades are kind of stupid at this point, to be real. I'd rather get what we're getting right now from Croc, like dive in on the details. So I'm not even going to do grades. So I apologize. It says grades on the title. Grades are irrelevant at this point. I just want to learn and dive in on these players like we're doing with Croc. So I apologize in advance, but I think you guys are enjoying what we're getting here from Croc versus just a letter grade being thrown out there. But what about the nickel spot, though, right? Like they talked about him playing the nickel. That's more of like, doesn't a man come like zone, like the concern that you have, that's more if he's on the outside, right? If he's inside playing the nickel and covering the slot receiver, then it doesn't really matter, right? Am I wrong?
Well, from what I've been told, he played safety. I literally watched 4 games from this past season. So I have no knowledge of what he did prior, but I hear he played safety for some time. Now, he's not playing safety at the NFL level. He's slightly built, 186 pounds. Jimmy Ward was slight at safety. I mean, maybe 190. And I thought he did a good job, but you don't see a whole lot of that. And we'll see if he has like the physicality of Jimmy Ward. He was a very physical guy.
Yeah.
Playing in the nickel, you can kind of make that transition from safety nickel because there is a lot of kind of off coverage being able to play in space. Now, the biggest transition again from there, from what I saw him play at Florida State, was press man guy. In the nickel, you will likely be you'll likely be off more. And you're not just worried about what I'm doing at corner and maybe how that works with a safety or whatever. Like at nickel, it's I'm focused on my job. I'm focused on, okay, how I work with the cornerback, how I work with the linebacker, how I work with the safety, and my run fits. So there's a lot more thrown at you from a nickel perspective. Now, again, when I think of like a guy that can play nickel, does he have the movement skills to be able to do that? I'd say yeah. I think he's a fluid guy, click and close, like all that stuff is good. And for a guy that didn't have like a good 40, maybe he just didn't run great that day, but I think he ran 4.50. So it's not that he's slow, but that kind of, I think for guys on that you want to leave on the outside on the island, they just have a little bit more natural, pure speed. You look at guys like Richard Sherman, right? And it's like, well, he ran a 4.57. It's like, well, yeah, but the scheme that they ran allowed him to run a 4.57 and be able to still stay on top of receivers. As opposed to if you're telling a guy to just line up in the slot and play man, I tell you, even Richard Sherman probably wouldn't thrive in that type of environment. So I think he has the ability. If you're saying, oh, we want you to play man in the slot, cool. If you want him to play zone in the slot, again, that's another thing that will be just a learning lesson for him.
Yeah.
Now, not that he can't do it. I mean, we saw Emmanuel Mosley. I think we view Mosley as an outside guy. If y'all remember back to his rookie year, you know, they had him, they had signed Tarvarius McFadden, and you know, Emmanuel Mosley was your starting out in his group, or in the preseason in his group, like that second unit. Started outside, and then in nickel situations, he slid inside. And there were times where the 49ers used him at nickel, like with Mosley early on. So Green can maybe make that transition. I do think he has the movement skills ability. Mosley tested better, but from like length standpoint, stuff like that, they were pretty similar.
More likely to you, Diamador Lenore plays inside or Green?
Oh, that's like a big question.
Yeah,
I would say it's more likely Lenore plays inside than Green,
because he's done it.
Because it's more difficult to transition to that at the NFL level, and he's done a really good job at it. So it's just easier for him to be like, all right, Lenore, you're gonna play nickel, or hey, Lenore, you start outside for us, and then in nickel situations you slide inside and Green plays outside. Like they could do that as well, to where Green is on the field 100% of the snaps, but hey, let's play you outside when need be, and Lenore, you'll be our starting outside guy, which he probably wants because you make more money. He's up for contract and he makes more money as an outside corner as opposed to a slot.
One thing I'll say before we move on to super chats and the other positions is that this 49ers DB room is the best I've seen in I don't know how long, with Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, Yeadham, Rock Ya-Sin. Like, that's a good ass DB room to me.
I would say probably the best since 2020 heading into the year. I really like that DB room.
With a healthy Verrett.
You have Richard Sherman coming off of an all-pro season. Kelly Witherspoon had starting ability, but Emmanuel Mosley was taking over that spot, but he was he was turning into a legit starter. You have Verrett, who you didn't even quite have to play. You still had Jimmy Ward and Tart in the slot. I want to say that year they still maybe had Kawhi Williams. Did they have him in 2020? They lose him after the Super Bowl.
I'm not sure.
But
that
it kind of a deep
memory, actually.
I thought that was a deep heading into the season. Now everybody got hurt, so it kind of threw everything off. But.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important. All right, so Brother Bob says KC fixed their O-line, won 2 Super Bowls, then drafted O-line again. Some teams, straight up, man, some teams seem to prioritize it more than the 49ers. I think a part of it is scheme. I think I really think part of it's scheme.
KC drafted O-line, but they still took a receiver first, right? Like 31, they traded up for Xavier Worthy, and then drafted off the line second round, late second round too.
And I Renardo Green, I have a friend that played at Florida State that I always ask whenever somebody comes out of Florida State, and he's really tough. He's really tight on the linebacker that we got in the 7th round that we'll talk about. He said Renardo Green is solid. He's like, he's not this elite corner that we typically put out here in Florida, but he's solid. That was his take on him. So it wasn't an overwhelming endorsement of Renardo Green. So I'm still like TBD, and all these guys are TBD, to be honest.
I have a kid that I trained and coached that's at Florida State right now, and I asked him, I was like, hey, 49ers drafted the corner from your school. What's your thoughts? He said really knows how to play the hands, gets in phase, and is a great man-to-man coverage guy. So I mean, he didn't have it wasn't like this deep analysis, but and as a kid, he was a freshman last year,
right?
Which I think he's going to start this year at the linebacker position. But
Dope. Brother Boss says, Dave, yep. So Croc, percentage of Kyle Levy winning a Super Bowl in San Francisco. We got so much to talk about, man.
I like when they call Kyle Levy.
Kyle Levy's hilarious. Dave Barkley says, well, KC is smart. Brother Bob says, no, give us grades. It's my content. It's good content, my brother. Great. Honestly, I'm going to give you my overall grade so we can get through these. My overall thoughts on this, I give them an A for the players. I really like the players. I know that's naive. Not all these guys are going to work out, but I give them like a C+ C- for the way they prioritized them. I would have took one of these tackles in Renardo's spot personally. That's what I would have done. So I don't like how they prioritize player positions, but the players themselves are good. And I don't know if Crocker wants to jump in on grades.
Yeah,
Maybe the overall draft.
I give them a C, where it's just like, again, like I don't feel like this. Wow, can't believe they did that. Oh man, they really did this, and man, you got starters that I feel like a lot of guys that they drafted, and again, we'll get more into each guy, but I felt like if you wanted guys that would come in on a team that potentially, Super Bowl caliber team, I thought there was a window. I got something in my eye. I thought there was a window to be able to draft guys that would be more likely coming to start. You know what I'm saying? I thought, hey, now again, this is without me knowing how they view players or whatnot. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, you draft Jackson Powers Johnson or Powers Jackson or whatever. Boom, you got a center, like starting center. Boom. Yeah. You come second round, you have, Rosengarten or Siamatea at tackle. You feel like he has an opportunity to start over McKivitz. Boom, you draft those guys, and all right, McKivitz, boom, you got your replacement. And then you go, third round, and if you still stick with Puni, you still got a guy that potentially could start over
Burford or Feliciano.
John Feliciano. So from that perspective, it was like those were like three guys where it's like we got
what I would have done.
Starters, you know what I'm saying? And you fixed pretty much some, your center position, your right guard position, and your tackle position. And obviously, that's in a perfect world. But I think, like, if you would have told me, boom, you got three starters as opposed to a potential starter at right guard, and then the other guys is like, well, okay, I could see how, Pearsall fits in this offense and the things he does well. Like that's a good look. Like, okay, long term, I really like this move. Gets a chance to kind of not have to be the guy, no pressure, but you come in and play. I get it. Green is like, hey, you get to compete with Isaac Edom and Ambry Thomas and Darrell Luter and Rocky Sin, who nobody's talking about. And, we'll see. Like, you get to the NFL level, it's not as much difference between these guys as people think. And to have veterans, I just feel like they typically have the upper hand, unless you told me round one you took Kool-Aid McKinstry, right? Now that's different too. Take Kool-Aid round one, Rosengarten or Siamatea round two, the guard round three. That's still, to me, like Kool-Aid starting at corner. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And they didn't go that route. So I give it a C, whereas like I like the guys. I just don't know like what's their impact going to be year one. And for a team that's Super Bowl ready, you were likely not going to draft guys that were just day one, we're going to jump in and start. But I thought they had the opportunity to potentially get guys that could do that or compete more for that immediate role.
Agreed 100%. That's what my draft would have been. So I like the players they drafted. I just don't like them for us. And I don't like the prioritization. And that's why, like, I give them an A. I like these players. There's none of these players I'm like, oh, they're trash. Renardo Green is probably, honestly, he's probably the guy I'm the least high on, to be real. But I like the players. I just don't feel like it was the right picks at the right time. And I give them a really bad grade for prioritization. It probably evens out to like a C plus, honestly. Yeah. So there's your grades, Bob. Dreams 2-4 says early hot take: Sam Hartman will end up being the guy for the Commanders, and Trey Lance will start for the Cowboys. That is a hot take, my friend. All right, man. Dominick Puni, round 3, pick number 86, out of Kansas. Finalist for Polynesian College Football Player of the Year. Shout out to my Polynesians. Was named first team All Big 12 Conference. Was a starting left tackle at Kansas. Did not give up a sack all year. Probably a guard is what most people are saying in the NFL. What's your thoughts on Dominick Puni?
This is a guy that, again, I didn't watch film on him. I defer to the guy. Shout out to my guy Brad Graham, and I know he was really big on Puni. Really like his potential fit for the 49ers. You talk about getting a guy that you can identify as a guard. That's the spot, your third round, especially guard. Like, unless it's just a home run hitting guard, I think between day two, at some point, day two, that's the spot where you can get a guard that can play. Right. So, after that, it's a lot of what we'll see, but that's still the range, right? When we talk about looking for starters, a guard round 2, round 3 might as well be kind of viewed as like a first round guard from a like prioritization standpoint.
Mhm.
So with him, I like that. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's a good range. I feel like he got drafted where he's supposed to get drafted, and that's good value for that
Yeah.
spot. And a guy who again does not have to come in and day one be a starter, but potentially can work his way into where like, oh man, really like his transition. Man, he's strong. Can do a better job of resetting the line of scrimmage, but overall, we like his fit, his movement skills, being able to be a zone blocking guard, start day one. And if we hear that, I wouldn't be surprised. But Feliciano did play extremely well at guard for the 49ers. Unfortunately, he had to get hurt in the Super Bowl. But yeah.
Yeah, stock down on Burford, honestly, with this pick a little bit. And here's the thing is, like, I like Dominick Puni. I think he's going to be a good player. He's probably a guard. And to me, guard was the third most important position on this offensive line that the 49ers needed. To me, it's a toss-up between center and right tackle, to be real. And guard was the third. In the future, they're going to need one because it doesn't look like Burford may end up being that guy. And Feliciano, I think I've been saying it before we got him. That was like, as soon as we signed him, I thought he was going to be like the third best offensive lineman on this team. And to me, he turned out to be that way. Trent Williams, Banks, Feliciano. And so they got Feliciano for this year. So there's not a glaring need right now for Dominick Puni. But I like him as a player. It was the third most important position to me as far as like what we needed. And so that's why I like the player, and I'm glad we got him. Don't get me wrong. He's probably one of my 3 favorite picks in this draft for the 49ers. So I'm glad we got him. I just, again, I feel like we missed opportunities at center and right tackle. My question, though, a lot of people are bringing this up, and if the 49ers do this, I'm going to be so hot, Croc. A lot of people are saying Dominick Puni's brought in to replace Banks because Banks is going to be a free agent after this year. If that's the case, they haven't got better at all. They're just replacing good with good. They need to extend Banks and put this dude on the right side after Feliciano's gone next year. Do you think he's here to replace Banks, or do you think this is our right guard for the future?
I haven't even looked at Aaron Banks as a guy that, like, oh man, you're close to losing him. You know what I'm saying? So maybe that's a different perspective that I just haven't viewed. I'd say right now the 49ers probably aren't focused so much on Puni being the guy that replaces Banks. I think right now they're viewing it as, can he help and maybe replace Feliciano or one of these other guys? And then if so, then all right, we're good. And then we'll worry about Banks when that time comes up.
Yeah. I hope that's the case because I feel like you got to build. Trent's going to be gone. You can't just let Aaron Banks go. Trent's going to be gone. You can't let Aaron Banks go. And then Brendell's getting like a 1 year. McKivitz is on 1 more year after this. Like, you can't just let all these dudes go. You got to me, I like Banks. I really do. And I hope they keep him. And I hope Puni's our right guard solution. And then they only got to focus on these other positions. Okay. So let's keep it pushing, bro. I like, again, Puni's one of my top 3 picks in this draft. My favorite pick in this draft, and I'm curious to see what you think, is Malik Mustapha, safety. Malik. I keep calling him Malik. I know it's Malik, but when I see the way his name is spelled, everybody I've ever met, his name is pronounced Malik. But it's,
is it
Malik.
Malik?
Yeah, it's Malik to everybody I've ever met in my life, bro.
That's Malik. I don't care what they say.
That's like me spelling my name Ryan and be like, no, it's Ryan. Like, no, it's Ryan, bro. Your name's spelled Ryan, but I'll be.
It's cool. Like me. My name is Eric, ERIC, but like call me Rick because the E is silent. Like, who decides to just change? Like,
it's Eric.
Yeah, no. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, nah, man, your name Malik. Like, I know hella Maliks, and it's Malik.
Yeah,
like one of my really good friends. About to go visit him next month. Malik. I don't know, like. Malik,
it's gonna be hard for me to get it in my head, bro. But he goes by Malik, so I'll respect. But he is my favorite player.
Terrell Owens, though, it is Terrell Owens, and I do know Terrell's, and it's spelled like the same.
Yeah, I've never even heard of a Malik before. He's the first Malik I've ever heard of. It's always Malik, but Malik Mustapha, man, and no disrespect to Malik, I like this guy. dude is a straight cannonball. John Lynch said he's the favorite interview he had all in this whole process. When I watch him, the dude is built like just ridiculous. Not the biggest dude, can hit. I think his speed is underestimated. He was clocked at 23 miles per hour. He's extremely intelligent. I don't know, man. I really, if any of these guys hit, to me, it's going to be Malik Mustapha. That's my opinion. But I really want to hear your opinion because this is one of the biggest needs that you had listed when we spoke last week. What do you think about Malik?
Yeah, I thought the safety position was like an underrated spot. Now, the thing is, I'm looking for a guy that's maybe a little different than what they
More coverage.
drafted. Yeah, I think the NFL has gone to a lot of coverage unless people it changes. The NFL changes. Maybe we see a lot more 21 personnel in the NFL throughout this year. So you can have more of those kind of box safety type guys and just continue to run your two high. But once teams start wanting to spread it out, and we saw the 49ers get in this situation, even in the Super Bowl, when the speedster got behind everybody, I think he caught the ball. He got behind Gibson and those guys. They caught it, but then I think the Chiefs end up fumbling though on that drive. But you just need guys that can cover and play in space. And he's a headhunter. I love the way he runs that alley. It's beautiful. Shout out to my guy Desmond Bishop and Coach Dez. He played with the Niners for a bit, played 9 years in the NFL, won Super Bowl. Well, he's our defensive coordinator at the high school I coach. I coach DBs. He's the DC. And we send random stuff to each other. And a week or two ago, he sent me Malik Mustapha and was like, man, look how this guy's coming downhill. Like, and we always look to see, like, can we get our guys to do this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and part of that Instagram reel was saying, man, like the best tackling safety in this class or the best, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the 49ers got somebody that is a missile, that is going to come downhill. And I'm curious to see how the 49ers utilize him. Not like the biggest guy. He has size. He's just like 5'10" or something like that. But he's not like a scrawny, skinny guy or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he's coming downhill. He runs that alley. He's going to be terrific in run support. I'm anxious to continue to dive into his film and see more of how he does in coverage because I think everybody's very aware of how he is in run support.
And I think he's underrated in coverage, Croc. Like when I watch him, this is one of the guys who's been on my draft board for a while. Malik Mustapha is one of the two guys that I wanted that the Niners got. I think he's underrated as a coverage safety. So I'm curious when you watch him to get to learn more about your opinions on him. I think he's underrated. Like they look at his 40 time and they're like, okay, he's not that fastest dude in the world, but he was clocked at 23 miles per hour. 23 miles per hour is unreal. So I really like Malik Mustapha. If any one of these players hits, to me, this is going to be the guy that does it. If it's just one dude, this is the guy I'm putting my money on. I think 49er fans should be hyped on this dude. I really like him. But let's keep it pushing, man. The other guy I wanted the 49ers to get, just because to me, this is a boomer bust dude, but his athleticism is through the damn roof. One of the things I wanted for the 49ers before the season, I tweeted it out. I just retweeted it. I wanted them to get younger. Obviously, you do that through the draft no matter what. And faster. This is another fast-ass dude. One of the fastest running backs in the history of the game, to be real. Like, if you look at his speed, 4.33, 40, 42.5-inch jump. Isaac Guerendo, he has health issues. That's my concern. He didn't have a ton of production in college, to be real. But if he can reach his potential, you're talking about a freak athlete. To me, he's the boomer bust in this draft. What do you think about Isaac?
I go to the film and obviously you see the measurements, right? And that was the 1st thing I did. Like, man, he 6'1" or 6'2", 221, ran low 4.3 and explosive. I'm like, man, this is off the charts, right? Like the 49ers got an explosive ass running back. And then you watch the film and he wasn't like their starter. They had another running back that they featured more. So that immediately was like, oh, okay, like, because you're clicking through the all 22 and you're trying to find him. So it's like every third possession he was in there. And the first play that he gets it, boom, gets it outside, puts a foot in the ground, probably gets 20 yards. I'm like, okay, nice run. Next play was a nice inside run that he had, got to the next level. But it was very clear that he's kind of like Raheem Mostert and I've seen people say that, but from this perspective, and they are different though. And I'll talk about how they're different, but there's some similarities. Raheem Mostert got cut 7 times before making an NFL roster.
Yeah.
So his running style is kind of unique to like for him. And a lot of times you don't see it truly work at the next level. It's kind of this straight up and down, not as much of a wiggle guy, but man, I can put my foot in the ground and get north. But there's not a lot of
like that. Yeah.
There's not as much, you don't really get the change of direction. We've kind of gotten spoiled having Christian McCaffrey who just gives you everything, right? Yeah. But this back, man, and I don't want to butcher his name. I was watching him. He is a big back. Now this is the interesting part. He runs like a power back, which that's not Raheem Mostert.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a power back that like I can give you the 4 yard, I can give you the 5 yards, but at any moment, like if there is that crease, I can scoot through. He kind of does it at one speed and he can hit the home runs. It's just how consistent is that going to be at the NFL level? I think the 49ers kind of maybe view him a little bit like maybe even in like
fullback.
Elijah Mitchell kind of similar.
Yeah.
In that way. So
they're talking he could be a fullback. He's also good in pass protection.
Yeah, he's good at pass protection. I thought he was good catching the ball at the backfield. I didn't get like excited watching him, but I could see like, okay, I see how they may want to add this kind of guy. And they've been looking for, they drafted Titus Price. He's a bigger back. They drafted Trey Sermon. He's a bigger back, So it almost feels like they're trying to find that bigger back that gives them that juice as well, which Titus Price kind of underrated, like 4.48 guy. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, this is much faster than that, but at the end of the day, they've been looking for a bigger back that has that speed, and he has it. I'm curious to see how they work to kind of put it all together. But he does come off more as a one-cut type guy.
And the Niners really like the one-cut dudes. Really, that's what they look for. They don't want the guys that are, shaking it up in the backfield. Like, they like that stuff. So, I mean, that's probably why they were attracted to him, to be real. It's just a question, can he stay healthy and will it translate? He's got all the attributes. He can block, which I'm sure they loved there. Like you said, he is more of a power back. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use him. And it's really just that mental, I feel like. I know the running back coach loved him a lot. So
here's the thing. They went – Kyle joked about, we're going to draft a running back in the 3rd round. Then we're going to draft one in the 6th round. And the 6th round running back is going to be better. He kind of joked about that. They went for intangibles with this guy, like things that you just can't coach, right? And just like, all right, we'll coach around that and get him to have all this ability. The guy they got undrafted, Schrader, I watched him in college.
Yeah.
There wasn't no like, I got to skip through every 3rd possession and see if he's in the game. He was just hella good, but he was probably the worst tester of all time. You know what I'm saying? So to be able to get Schrader undrafted, and he went undrafted for a reason. Let's not, you know what I'm saying? He went undrafted for a reason. But if we're just talking about pure runners, like as a running back, if people are like, oh man, the undrafted guy is better than the draft pick, I would not at all be surprised. Because Schrader, how productive he was in how he did it. Like, he was a good back. He just tested terribly for a guy that's not like.
Isn't that what happens with the Niners, right? The later round pick does better than the earlier round pick. And the Niners had a 3rd round grade on Isaac Guerendo, according to the Niners. And they got him in the 4th. But it seems like it wouldn't surprise me if the guy they got as a UDFA ends up being better than Isaac Guerendo. I hope so. And he could be your kick returner, punt returner with that speed. It's going to be interesting to see who they roll with. I don't know if he got that
wiggle though. Like, his change of direction, it ain't like I like a lot of running backs that have like that move on top of a move, right? Like when we watch, and again, kind of spoiled. We get spoiled a lot. Got to watch Joe Staley. He was really good. Got to watch Trent Williams. You see Debo, how he does things. We kind of get spoiled with guys that like have like this special ability. You have Christian McCaffrey now. You get to watch him at the running back position, and he does these things, and he makes it look so like effortless, but he gives you that, again, a little bit of everything. And I like his ability to make a move on top of a move. And I think at the NFL level, you kind of need that to be consistent, unless you just think you're going to run through everybody or just really be faster than everybody, which even as much as the Guerrero kid, I don't think he plays as fast. Like Mostert, it was you see he hurts angles. He's so fast. I remember watching him against New Orleans Saints, and he had like a 12-yard touchdown, but he ran straight through that A gap, and he got through so fast that the safeties ran into each other trying to hit him because he breaks angles that quick. I don't think Guerrero is like, I don't think he has that type of speed. I think he gets up to top speed well, though.
It'll be interesting to see how it works out and who ends up being better between the two. All right, man. The next 4th round pick, they had 3/4 in this draft. And Jacob Cowing. So Jacob Cowing out of Arizona. We talked about him briefly earlier. What do you think about Jacob, man? And is there a chance that this dude is a better receiver than Ricky Pearsall?
Man, really liked him, man. Again, went to Arizona games this past season. Watch him on TV. And just his ability to be able to play in space as a true slot. Like, so I think he's more of your true slot, where Pearsall, like, he can play outside, he can play slot. He's more Z, right? So you just kind of look at him as a guy who plays, he's off the ball, and you kind of move him around. Cowan will likely be a slot specifically. And the reason why I was excited about it, because I can see exactly what his role is day one. Hey, man, just go be Ray McCloud. You know what I'm saying? Like, go be our primary kick returner. Go be our primary punt returner. You'll get a touch here and there offensively. Hey, let's just try to get the ball in his hands twice. Like, you don't have to force it to where he's a guy that touches the ball 6 to 8 times or anything like that. But, like, can we give him the ball twice? Just little quick outs. I remember a couple years back, the 49ers drafted Danny Gray. And I remember thinking, like, bro, if y'all wanted a speed guy, because, I just wasn't high on Danny Gray. I thought he had straight line speed, but I didn't think he played to that speed. 99% of the time, I didn't think he threatened cornerbacks. You watch how they guarded him. They guarded Danny Gray more like he ran a 4.6 as opposed to somebody that ran a low 4.3. Well, there was another receiver in that class where I'm like, why didn't you take this guy? Is it because he's smaller? Calvin Austin. Really like Calvin Austin out of Memphis. He played some outside slot, but he's a punt return, kick return. And then you watch him on Pittsburgh Steelers, and again, not a huge part of their offense. They have all these other receivers or whatever, but you just see his role, and I see him, Cowan, being that kind of guy, that kind of receiver, being able to play again in space, in a slot, just get the ball in his hands. So that excited me. That was probably like the most excited I was, because I think the role is clear for him.
Yeah. We're gonna see what happens, man. But another fast guy. One of the Niners get younger and faster, and they did. Another burner. And so we'll see, man. Maybe this is your punt return, kick returner as well. We'll find out. But yeah, if he ends up being better than and I have, Emiliano popped this up. I'm horrible with this just in general, but these are all y'all pronunciation of every iteration of Ricky's last name throughout the episode. Yeah, Pearsall, whatever his name is. But yeah,
I thought it was just Pearsall.
Pearsall. Okay, I'll work on it. I'm horrible at that in general. But if he ends up being better than Pearsall, it's gonna be interesting. All right, we got 2 more guys I want in this draft class. Next guy is Jarrett Kingston, offensive lineman from USC. There's talk that he might be him, as well as the UDFA they got. Can't think of his name right now. Drake Nugent. So Drake Nugent and Kingston could be battling it out for a center role with the 49ers, I think. What's your thoughts on Jarrett Kingston from USC?
I would say between them and him and the linebackers, like I don't have like a crazy take on any of these guys. You're finding maybe potentially some depth. I'm excited to see how the linebacker competes with, D Winters and Jalen Graham. You potentially have a guy. I know the kid out of USC, from a movement skill standpoint, he was like one of the better guys. And it seems like the 49ers kind of prioritize that with some of their offensive linemen in this class. And people talk about how that the ability to do what they did, how that transitions to the NFL level. So we'll see. But Is he somebody that's going to just come in and start? Hope so, right? Like, because if you start, then you're making the 49ers offensive line better. But I don't have like him and the linebacker. I don't really have any like crazy takes on those guys.
Jared Kingston is the guy I'm most unaware of that we got. I didn't know anything about him before we drafted. Never even heard of him. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, he can compete with center spot and be somebody. Yeah.
And I will watch him. Peacock and I, again, Locked On 49ers come at you 5 days a week. We will break down each guys. We just talked about the receivers. So that episode goes up tonight. We just recorded multiple episodes yesterday, but so the receiver one is tonight. But we will get to like the guys and their role and what they're battling from a depth standpoint. The pros, cons, all that. We'll cover all things. So I will get to them. I just ain't got to him yet.
Yeah. And then, all right, let's finish it up with Tatum Bethune. Again, it's not a guy that it sounds like you haven't learned much about yet, but I told you I had an FSU guy that used to play there. I hit him up. Actually, I'll take that back. I hit him up about Renardo Green. When they drafted Tatum Bethune, he hit me up and said, Ryan, this dude is an absolute dog. You're going to love him. And then I went back and watched film, and he's very Dre Greenlaw-ish. I think he's probably a steal at 7, honestly. I really like Tatum Bethune, so I'm interested to see what you think when you have an opportunity to go check him out more. He actually is I think he's going to be pretty decent. I'm hopeful. Again, if 2 or 3 of these guys work out, that's probably the average with the 49ers or which probably any team in general. A great draft means 4 or 5 of these dudes work out. That's a great draft if that happens. We'll see. It's fun giving grades on players. It's fun talking about them. But really, you need 2 or 3 years before you even figure out what the hell these dudes are, right? So we'll see. Any thoughts on Tatum?
Nah, but that's another guy. I should hit my guy up that's at
Hit him
FSU because my kid, he plays linebacker. So
Yeah.
he was in the room with him, so
He's
he
gonna know.
probably has some good insight on, again, he might not give me too much, but it's not like he's a draft scout guy. Like, okay, yeah, and he does this good, and when he attacks the A gap, and kids out, he's not going to be like that. But he might just say, "Hey, man, love him, hard worker." He taught me a lot.
Guys, if they're anything like my sons that are probably the same age as the kid you're talking about, you'd be lucky to get like a 3-word sentence out of them, right? Like it seems like them young dudes, they give you like 3 words, and you're like, all right, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Gammon, just real quick, let's answer this question. Then I got get ready. I think I'm gonna be on with Grant at 11. I got some work stuff I gotta do too. But Gammon says, are there any negatives towards drafting older 5th-year, 6-year college players versus drafting younger underclassmen? What do you think, Croc?
I think the biggest negative, if you talk to the analytic community, it's they have like a breakout age type thing, and they think that depending on the breakout age kind of determines how successful a guy might be at the NFL level. So with the 49ers getting these older guys, it's clear that their breakout age is past what the analytical community would deem as good. So again, I'm not an analytical guy. I just go off of what I see on film, but I know that's what they lean into. Now, they would miss on Deebo Samuel. They'd miss on Devontae Smith. That was a big thing with Devontae Smith. They're like, oh, his breakout age isn't as high as, like, let's say Jamar Chase. For Devontae Smith to still go in the top 10. Like, that's their thing. They want guys that have a certain level of success as a freshman and sophomore, and then when to come to junior year, okay, he's productive, boom, go to the NFL, terrific. 49ers have drafted in this past draft a lot of guys that played, 4 or 5, even like 6 years. You know what I'm saying? So the breakout age, again, if we're talking about a negative, would be that. I don't see it that way because, again, I just go more off of the film and what the player does. But if there is a negative, it might just depend on who you talk to from an age standpoint.
Yeah, and it could also be it makes you bring up the question, why did they not come out earlier if they're good? Why did they not come out earlier like a lot of guys do? Maybe they valued their college degree, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they're just smart. Like, let me focus on my education. Maybe that's what it is, but it does bring up the question, why were they not entered into the draft earlier? Another reason is you can't really it's going to kind of limit a lot of these guys on like being able to get a second contract. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you only want them to play 4 years, 5 years, and then they hit their peak and they can go get paid somewhere else and you move on. So there's, I think, positives and negatives. Experience is probably a good thing. So little of both. Croc, what you got going on, man?
Oh man, I'm chilling. I probably got to call my guy Dez. I got to run the defense today at practice, so you know, start working on developing a lot of these younger guys. I got DB training session at 4:30, so I get to do that. But yeah, man, not a whole lot. May just go take a walk in the park. I don't know. It's kind of killing my allergies suck right now, but
Yeah,
I'm chilling,
allergies
man.
are rough. Yeah, allergies rough right now for a lot of folks. Croc, man, good job. I had a bunch of other questions I want to ask you, but once we started diving in, I realized that we're not going to get into that. Like we just broke down every player. This was fantastic. I appreciate you being on here. You give a lot of great insight that not a lot of content creators are able to give just because of your experience in the game. So I appreciate you being here, dude.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. All right. We'll link back up next Monday. I think I'll be on with Grant soon. I got to check my messages. I got to get to work. If not, I'll be on with the coach on Wednesday. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit that like button. Subscribe to both channels if you haven't yet. I appreciate it. Give me your grades in the comments after the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for watching the Ryan G. Hensley Show. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. The Ryan G. Hensley Show is brought to you by Hensley Real Estate and Mortgage. I've been operating my real estate business in the state of California since 2009, and I would love to help your family. We are also sponsored by Hensley Solar. I can put solar on your house in up to 38 states. Underdog Fantasy is a sponsor of the channel. Please check out the details in the description to see how you can join Underdog Fantasy and get $100 matched in your initial deposit. And finally, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Blue Water Credit. They are the best credit repair company I've ever dealt with. If you want to fix your credit, reach out to Blue Water Credit. Details in